I'm Ewan Fox, and welcome to the second episode of the 4Barsrest podcast interview, our recently launched series that sees us talk to musicians and personalities with a link to the brass band world. On this episode, we are joined by the trumpet and flugel player Johnny Thirkell, who has performed on literally hundreds of pop, rock and jazz recording hits and live performances with the world's great stars. These include working with the likes of Jamiroquai, Level 42, David Bowie, Paul Weller, George Michael, Take That, Kylie Minogue, Lucky Man, Cher, Tom Jones, Lionel Richie, Tina Turner, George Harrison, Swing Out Sisters, The Who, and so many more. He's also played with the Buddy Rich Band and Gil Evans Orchestra and played alongside the great Derek Watkins and a host of world-class session musicians and stars. Over the last few years, though, he has been developing different aspects of his musical outlook. The latest, a series of bespoke elite music camps based at his Spanish villa about 20 miles from the city of Granada in the beautiful Sierra Nevada mountains, alongside some of the industry-leading musicians he has worked with for many years. The latest is a cornet camp, which will be led by Tom Hutchinson himself and will go from the 15th to the 21st of June. We've got plenty to talk about, but Johnny, the first question, many thanks for joining us, is how did an old soprano player with the Easington Colliery Band get from playing Rhapsody in brass to rubbing shoulders with a funk star JK and Jamiroquai?
Well, thanks for the spectacular intro, Ewan. I really appreciate that. Now, there's a question as to whether that's an upward trajectory or a downward trajectory. Easington Colliery Band to Jamiroquai. I don't know. This could be some debate there. It's Ewan, like lots of. I mean, I've been in, sort of fairly long-term member of various bands. Jamiroquai, Level 42, Lisa Stansfield, I've been playing with for 35 years, and they all start the same way. I'm booked as a studio player to play on the album, and then somewhere along the line, I get invited to go on tour, and here we are with Jamiroquai. Here I am, 30. Let me see, 1972, I think, was the first album. So here we are, 33 years later, still doing it.
Well, tell us how did that first part of your music career as such then start up in the Northeast with Easington Colliery Band? Did you come from a musical family?
Not really, no. But there was a kid in my class called Ken Brown, who was a sort of boy prodigy cornet player. He played with a band which was then called Craghead Colliery, but I think they became Patchogue
Everready,
Plymouth.
yes, Everready Band, I think, yeah.
Everready. That's right. Well, Ken was this sort of boy wonder principal cornet with that band. He was in my class at school, and he basically every week, 20 minutes before the end of double maths, he would disappear for band practice. So I thought, I'll have a bit of that. That sounds like the greatest wheeze ever. So Kenny and I are still friends. In fact, Ken, I think, has just retired as second trumpet in the Halle Orchestra. That's where he went. He might be another good subject, actually, for your podcast. So that I started it at school. And of course, living in the Northeast, you don't have to take more than a dozen steps before you bump into a brass band. So I just took one of those things, I just sort of took to it and loved it from the beginning.
But I remember when we talked prior to doing this interview, you said that your first career choice, I got to say that not through choice, I would have thought, well, you were sent underground. But I think, how long did you actually last there before you thought to yourself, there must be a better life elsewhere?
Well, I did work at Easington Colliery. I wasn't at the coalface, but I was in the stores and, sort of running around up and down. And I lasted maybe a couple of years, but it took me 10 minutes to work out I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. So I went to night school, got some A-levels, and then a couple of years later, I was accepted at the Leeds College of Music, who at the time were the only institution in the country that ran a degree course on popular music, jazz and popular music.
So was jazz and popular music always, as you thought, when you started listening to music, did you go through a phase and you thought, right, yeah, that's really, tickled my fancy? Brass bands were still important to you. And as I was saying, we were talking earlier and you played Rhapsody in brass, etc. So where did you think to yourselves, yeah, I think I could be actually good enough, or that's where I really want to go?
Well, for me, it was just really doing something else. I wanted to I didn't start off wanting to be in the music profession, but I saw my route out of working down the pit. I had a friend that another pal who I'd been at school, who was going to Leeds College, and he came home in the summer and told me all these great stories about all the different bands he was playing in. So that's. I just went down there. I listened to brass band music. I still listen to brass band music, and but I also, I had a sister who was 10 years older than me. So she kept me. There's always lots of pop music going on around the house, and to be frank, and that's where the money is anyway, right? I mean,
There's honesty with the
I like
musicians.
shiny things.
Anyone who turns it out and says, "I do it for the love of it," or "I do it for a really nice fast car," is a great
Yeah,
lifestyle with it. So
absolutely.
you
It's
were
the
at
easiest
Leeds.
way in the world to make a living.
So you were at college then, but where did the first career break come for you? Then you didn't step straight into the rock and pop part of it. You had to do your
No,
apprenticeship. And where were those hard years then? When did you learn the trade?
I went to Leeds College of Music, but I actually only lasted a little over a year. At the beginning of my second year, I met a guy. I met a guy in a pub. I was introduced to him, and he was a trumpet player. And I said, "Oh, the usual. What are you up to? What are you doing?" He said, I'm playing on the QE2." I said, "Wow, that must be fantastic." And he said, "Well, yeah, but I'm trying to get off. I just need to find somebody to take my place." So I'll do it. And so that was it. This was a Friday evening, and on Tuesday morning, I found myself in Southampton getting on the QE2. So I spent a year on there, and as you say, learning the trade. And then when I got off, I just naturally went to London. Turned up, the archetypical story, right? I turned up with my trumpet and a little bit of cash and tried my luck, you pick things up. It's a networking game, right? And I'm a guy who likes meeting people. I like talking to people, and you sort of network like that, and slowly you get into the function band, or so weddings, bar mitzvahs, like that, and you slowly sort of build your way up, and so long as you're doing the job, then here I am, still doing it.
We talked a little bit earlier as well. You said about the discipline that it taught you. Brass bands teaches you a certain discipline about playing. Is
Oh
that
my lord.
discipline that you took then going on to the QE2 and playing, doing each night, you're in performance every night for an audience. Did it stand you in good stead for the beginnings of that musical career?
Ewan, honestly, for a brass player, brass banding is the best, beyond question. It is the best grounding. If you want to be a studio musician as a trumpet player or a trombone or whatever, you couldn't get a better grounding. Don't need to tell you, right? Your reading becomes, you have to read with a brass band. You're doing different pieces. You may be working on a test piece, but as well as that, the librarian pulls out different stuff every week. If I turn up at outside of the two streams of my work, one is being in a pop group, and the other is just doing regular day-to-day studio stuff. And I turn up at a session, let's say at 10 o'clock in the morning. I have no idea what the music is. I often don't know who the artist is, and I don't know anything about it. It might be a film session. No idea. And
So
so
what,
that
go on,
discipline
when
of
you
being
say
able to
that,
sight read,
mm,
I got that from brass bands. That's an invaluable skill.
so talking about that part of it then, is that one of the more key parts of it is actually that discipline of forcing yourself because you don't know what's going to be on what the dots are going to be in front of you there. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to get that thorough background, that discipline about yourself, about making sure that when you are there, you act both professionally, but also you're able to do the job in hand. Otherwise, there's somebody else, the next taxi in the rank will come along and take your job.
100%, right? You're only as good as your last job, and yeah, the discipline that brass banding gives you is just absolutely crucial, crucial to that. You turn up. When I first, in my early days in London, I was fortunate enough to get the job with the BBC Radio Big Band, and we did 9 sessions a week, and each 3-hour session we recorded 9 tunes from scratch, tunes we'd never seen before. 9 tunes in a 3-hour session. That is incredible discipline. We literally run through the tune once, on would go the red light, straight under 1/4 inch tape, no drop-ins, no fixing, nothing. And that's kind of a baptism of fire. And it's brass banding, absolutely. that prepared, that had me prepared for that, for sure.
You worked, of course, you said next to hundreds of times the great Derek Watkins. You told me a story before we did the recording that you were there, sat with him next day, and it was exceptionally difficult trumpet part. And
Yes.
as you say, that you get the notes, then you do the couple of run throughs, and then the red light goes on, and the man like never missed a note.
No, I mean Derek was just I mean a genuine phenomenon. I've become very friend. In fact, I was over in Los Angeles recording, doing a session with a guy who's been my idol my whole life, a trumpet player called Jerry Hay, and I've become friends with him over the last few years. And I was out there doing a session for Jerry, and those guys, they are the sort of cream of the crop. Wayne Bergeron and Jerry
Oh,
Hay and
yeah.
Gary Grant and all of those guys. Wayne was the other trumpet. It was Wayne and I on the session. Um, and they, for me, this is the top of the tree, the global tree. And they all were absolutely in awe of Derek. They were really in awe of Derek. And Wayne was saying to me, "What was it like? What was he like? Was it great?" Derek really was the top of the tree. And the story I told you was we turned up for a session, and the I was on second trumpet, of course I was. Derek on first, and it was fiendishly difficult. We have a couple of run-throughs. On goes the light. Derek plays it flawlessly, but maybe a trombone. Somebody else knocked a note over. Can we do another one? Anyway, we did it 3 or 4 times. Each time he plays it flawlessly. And I said to Derek, "Geez, Derek, do you ever make a mistake?" And he looked at me and said, "Why would I do that?" And that just shows you his mindset, right? I think there is this whole mental thing of,
Mm.
and it's something, performance anxiety is something which I think grips a lot of people. But there's this sense of just inner confidence and inner steel. The idea of making a mistake just never ever occurred to Derek. He would look at the music and just play it. Phenomenal guy, and a really great guy too. Very funny, very funny.
Talking about him, and again, we talked about this a little bit earlier on, is that the key really? If you are going to be a performer, if you are going to put yourself on the stage, if you are going to be in the spotlight at any time, you have to have that. It's not an arrogance, it's that inner belief that what you were doing, you're very, very good at. I think Roger Webster, of course, the great corner player that we have here in the UK, said, these people are coming to listen to you perform.
Yeah.
So why should you be frightened of playing really well for them? Otherwise, they won't buy the ticket. If they didn't come, there's the worry. So do you find that not only with session musicians and great session musicians such as Derek, etc., and then, as you say, like some of the great stars that you've performed with, when they're in front of, say, 60,000 people in a stadium or in a recording studio when the red light goes on, something clicks within them and they just able to do something so brilliantly. Is it a trick? Can they learn it, or is it just inherent talent that they've got?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting question. I think there are two elements to it. One is that inner confidence, that inner steel, right? I've been here before. You open up the book and it starts on a high C, double high C. Well, I've played the double high C 1,000 times before in my life, and I'll play it another 1,000, I'm sure. It's just that sort of inner confidence. But also the other thing, I think I'm a great believer in preparation. If I ever feel nervous about something, and it doesn't really happen these days, but if I do, I know it's because I'm not prepared. Either my chops are not right, I haven't kept up the practice routine, or if it's a particular thing, I haven't looked at it properly. I'm just not prepared, and so the antidote to that is to make sure you're always prepared. I practice every single day. I haven't missed a day of doing less than an hour in at least 15 years. I never miss a day. When I go on holiday, I take a pocket trumpet with me, and I'll find a quiet corner somewhere and just play some long notes or something. And I think it's just that being prepared.
You said who taught you as well? Did somebody give you that, explain that to you as well? You said you went to New York, you've worked with different people, different teachers, etc.
I
Are there
did,
those
yeah.
people, those like gurus who can actually just pinpoint it immediately and say to you, this is what you've got to do, and it's like a light bulb moment for yourself?
For sure, for sure. I was very, very fortunate to study with a guy called Carmine Caruso, very famous trumpet teacher in New York. He taught John Faddis and all of those kind of Lou Soloff, all the really great New York studio players. Um, and often, his big thing was the mental approach. He would say to
Mm-hmm.
me, look, you've got this far, you've got to me, so you can clearly play, right? The rest of it is about how you how we all sabotage ourselves. And often I would go, I'd go for an hour's lesson and wouldn't play a single note. And I would come out of there feeling like the king of the world, because he knew how to get into your head and just, he would say, you can split a top F without even putting the trumpet on your face, right? The
Mm-hmm.
minute you entertain the idea that you might not hit it, you're in trouble. And that was a really kind of important period for me. That year and a bit that I studied with Caruso was just, it completely changed my mindset towards playing now.
And of course, you've performed with all these great stars, etc. A lot of people, of course, they see you on stage. We pay our tickets. We go into we go into the performance, and we see the great band, and they say, "God, the band were fantastic," when they didn't put a foot wrong there. So, what's the process with regards? Is it a bit like brass banding? Does JK come along and says, right, "Here we are, chaps. We've got to do 3 weeks of practice on my latest hit." So, what's the process that they go through with you as pro musicians, and the trust that they have in you to follow his ideas and what he wants to present to this great audience that he's performing to?
So do you mean like from a being on tour perspective, well,
Well, both sides of it, really. From
firstly,
the first time you get the music to the time that you're on
hmm,
tour. Is it
well,
like
often,
an
often
ongoing
Frank,
process type of thing?
kind of. When you're on tour, we'll probably rehearse for a week before the tour, and then we'll never rehearse again. And it'll just be a sound check. We'll spend half an hour making sure all the mics are working, and that's it. So we'll rehearse for a week, and then go on tour for 3 months, never rehearse again. Unless he wants to put in a different tune. Actually, often Jay will put in a different tune without even rehearsing. You've just got to remember it. You're expected to remember it. He's quite a hard taskmaster. He's very hard on himself, but that
Mm.
means he's also very hard on the people around him. But the interesting thing is, Jay, particularly on the early Jamiroquai albums, we went to the studio to record with no music at all. They would put the track on and say, "Okay, anybody got any ideas?" And you would come up with an idea, and I might come up with an idea, or the sax player comes up, and we sort of develop that. Okay, great, that's our line for the chorus. And then we just go into the booth and record the chorus, and then come out. Okay, now what's next? The second verse or whatever. And that's sorry, I keep banging my mic. That's the process that I prefer the most. I much rather that. I feels it's really creative. I love the edge, the edginess of that. Having to somebody's got to drop their trousers sooner or later, right, and come up with an idea, um, and risk being laughed out of the building. But I love that. That's the process I like the most in studios. Is that making it up as we go along, sort of thing.
And talking about those stars again, without dropping any names, as you say, that they aren't hard taskmasters, but there's a reason why they're the best of the best, and there's a reason why they fill the stadiums, because they don't allow themselves to drop their standards. So is it that always that search that they have? They may have a bit of an ego about them, they may be a bit of a diva, whatever, but you have to admire the sheer drive and the talent that they undoubtedly have.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think you're never going to be a major artist if you're a shrinking violet. It's just the two are just incompatible. But the extent to which you pass that around the rest of the band it varies. There are some guys who really Phil Collins, like the nicest guy in the world, and he trusts you to be professional enough to do a good job. And I think
Aye.
a lot of it is that. People will often ask me, well, you've worked with Paul McCartney and Phil Collins. What's it like? And it's entirely different to how you think it might be, because in that moment, in that situation, you are just a bunch of musicians trying to make the best record you can possibly make. So it's very, very rare. Look, of course, whoever the artist is, they have the final say, if you
Mhm.
know what I mean. But the process can be very, very democratic. George Michael was a particularly good example. I worked on the older album, and he was just incredibly inclusive, and you would listen to everyone's ideas, and well, I'm not sure about this, and just like he was it's just like a bunch of musicians trying to make the best record they possibly can. All of that ego goes out of the window because we've all got a job to do, you know.
I think there's a lesson learned there for some brass bands in many ways, because one of the problems that we have, you may have found this over the years, is a number of conductors with a bit of an ego who don't possibly trust the players. And talking as you back, going back to that mental state that you have, that it's a two-way thing. If a player is showing great confidence and the conductor's got great confidence in them, that can only benefit the overall performance. If you've got a conductor who's just perched above you, has got to conduct your way through a cadenza, for instance, then the player
Mm.
must be thinking, blimey, I must not be doing something right, I must be doing something wrong. So if somebody, a great star, turns around and says, "Yeah, Johnny, you do it. I know I can trust you to do that. You just put that in for me, leave the rest to me." That must give you a great boost of confidence.
Of course, I mean you have to do that. You have to trust people's ability. Otherwise, they won't develop as a player, and you won't get the best out of them. If you're trying to micromanage somebody playing a cadenza, for example, or playing anything really, I mean, I suppose it's the artist or the MD in a particular band. I suppose they're the equivalent of the conductor, and they, by and large, they have an overall, like any great leader. Okay, you need to make clear what the overall, what you're after, you know in general overall, and then trust people to play their part in that overall process. You can't be micromanaging people. It just doesn't work.
And that brings us on to your latest venture, which is the series of camps that you've been doing. I say in camp, it's not a bad place to go, is it? I've seen your villa that you're at in Granada. I was going to say, you're not slumming it. I have to say that part of it there. It's a fantastic place that you've got. But you were bringing that
Thank
ethos
you.
to there. You were giving, as you say, in the opportunity for a small group of people to come along and learn from the best. And you've worked with different people in from different styles and different bands, etc., different instrumentations, the horns, the basses, whatever you've done, and now you've come up with Tom Hutchinson for this cornered camp. Tell us what's going that ethos behind that, because it's open to everybody who just wants to develop as a player.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm a great believer in there is more to being a musician than just how you play. There's a we've spoken, haven't we, about earlier about the sort of mental aspect of it, and performance anxiety. My idea behind this was to give people access to the best people that I can possibly find. So the bass camp is Paul Turner, who's the bass player with Jamiroquai, and the guitar camp is Harris, who's the guitarist with Jamiroquai. I have a drum camp with Adele's drummer, and we do a vocal camp with the vocal coach from RADA. And of course, here we are, continuing in that vein, a corner camp with Tom Hutchinson, who's, I'm sure you'll agree, a phenomenal,
Mm.
incredible player. I mean, I really adore his playing. He's really incredibly talented. And the idea was we keep the group small. It's only 6 people, and so we all live together in my house up in the mountains there, and we have breakfast together, we have lunch together, we have dinner together. We will sit drinking around the fire at night. We'll go into Granada and have a look around, and we do it all together. And the kinds of questions that we've been talking about here, you've got a whole week to ask those questions. And so,
Mm.
it's more than just turning up for a cornet lesson and being told, how to tongue or whatever it is. It's much more than that. It's about finding out how it works. What's it like being in a band like the Corey band? What do you do? How do you deal with this? How do you deal? I think that's the beauty of it, because there's small numbers. You're not one of a pack of 30 people. There's half a dozen students, and we all sit around the dinner table, and you've got a week to ask as many questions as you like. And the food's pretty good too.
Oh, I was going to say that there. I was going to. It's interesting you talked about that. You're looking at these people can be at literally any level that you want, and you. What are the aspects that you're looking? You're talking about breathing part with them, the mental approach to performing as well. There's a little bit
Sure.
on improvisation if people want to go on there. There's no pressure on it, but it's about just broadening those horizons, giving extra vision and the way in which they can look about their play and how they can develop it, and of course, getting tips off one of the great players in the brass banding world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think yes, it's much more. You know, So we do a horn camp, which is a sax and trumpet. And when I teach the trumpet, when people come to the camp, 95% of the time, the problems that they have are related to fundamentals, right? It's breathing. They're not breathing properly. They're not, they're not keeping a constant flow of air. And so, with that in mind, it's actually not a problem having a variety of abilities. It's not really an issue because if you're talking about improving the fundamentals, which is what will make you, break through the whatever particular ceiling you're
Hmm.
at, then the level is not that important really. But also because the way that the week is structured, there'll be, it's a bunch of one-to-one stuff. So obviously the one-to-one sessions are absolutely tailored towards that person, but also the group things, it's ensemble stuff which will go right across a range. So there'll be easy parts, there'll be hard parts, and people will swap them around. And the most amazing thing I found I've been doing these camps now for 7 years, and again, because it's only small numbers, what happens is really quickly there's a sort of camaraderie develops, and
Mm.
you find everybody sort of rooting for everybody else. There's no competition, and you find, perhaps the more advanced players you'll find them in a corner with one of the less advanced players, just giving them a few tips. It's a really beautiful thing to see, the people helping each other. We're all just there to get better. Me too. I'm hoping to get lots of stuff I want to know how he does that beautiful clean tonguing. I
Yeah.
see it's racehorse versus cart horse. That's how I'm looking at it.
Does it give you a taste, though, just finally then, for, as you say, you've kept that connection with the banding world, and amazingly, as you say, Easington Colliery, at the present time they're doing something with Sam Fender, which again, so
That's right.
there must be something in the water up there with you wannabe rock star soprano players and brass banders up there. It must be doing, but you still look back at that to the banding world, see it as a relevant training part of it. How important is that we keep that connection with teaching brass music within local communities?
Oh my lord, it is absolutely crucial, and I really do genuinely see that as having been the best the best kind of starting ground that I could possibly have had. I love this whole idea. You get the third corner says it's often not not when you get to this kind of top level bands, but in the sort of bands that I played in, you've got the old boy and then a youngster on third and so on, and that idea of people passing on experience. The older guys pass on their experience to the younger people, and just that kind of organic growth of people's playing, you're exposed to sight reading, you're exposed to different kinds of music, you're exposed to the discipline, um, the discipline that being in a band requires. Those are fun. Look, I think they're phenomenal skills for human beings, right? Forget whether you
Hmm.
play. If when you play in a band, when somebody learns the cornet, for example, a kid, they're not just learning to play the cornet, they're learning self-discipline. They're learning maths. They're learning working together. They're learning that a bunch of people come together and we each do our individual thing towards a common goal. Surely that's something that the world needs, right? Not just music. People working together. How crazy is that?
The world needs more brass players. I think that's what it is. Every pop group should have a brass section. I've always said that. Every
100%.
every pop,
100%.
even Led Zeppelin, they would have done so much better if they'd had a brass group with them more often.
I know.
Well,
I
Johnny,
know.
where
They
can
won't be
people
told.
find out more information about this? You got a website, etc. How do they get in contact with you to find out more?
Yes, you can go to the website, which is elitemusiccamps.com, elitemusiccamps.com, and there's a selection of, you just click on corner camp, or there's a photograph of Tom there, and that will take you through to get all of the details. He's such a lovely guy, Tom. Honestly, I'm really really excited for doing it. I think it's going to be fabulous.
Well, Johnny, many thanks for joining us and telling us about your amazing career and also this fantastic opportunity that you would give in to players of any ability to find out more about how they can develop their skills in a wonderful setting there in the Sierra Nevada mountains just outside Granada. I'm going to be very, very jealous indeed. One last final point to you. I feel terrible. If you look behind me, all you see is just rows of old music. You look behind you and you see a selection of gold and silver discs. I'm very, very jealous indeed. I'll have to try and change it. I'll buy them off Amazon for the next time that we actually come and
Yeah.
speak. But Johnny, many thanks indeed, and we look forward to finding out more about the success of the camp and finding out as well, hopefully as well from Tom, how it's all gone. Johnny, many thanks for joining us on 4 Bars
Ewan,
Rest.
thank you so much. It's been great to chat to you. Thank you.